Welcome, everyone, to Rugby League Coach Podcast, episode number 11. We're back better than ever. This is an unusual night. We are filming this podcast in memory of Stephen Kolodziej. Kolodziej, sorry.
Yeah.
I apologise. Stephen, representative front rower for the Polish national side, died unexpectedly and is being remembered tomorrow, I believe, in his service. So that's why we've moved the podcast to today. Heavily involved in junior rugby league at the moment with St Christopher's Panani Rugby League Club and the East Hills Bulldogs as well. So the type of man that you want in the game, Lee.
Mate, I first met him when I was Poland coach. That's why I'm wearing the Poland shirt tonight. And anybody involved in the 2018 and 2019 teams were wearing the Poland shirts at the funeral as well. I'm one of the pallbearers, actually. That's how close we ended up being. And but when I first met him, he was all panicking about whether he'd be in the squad. And this is despite the fact that we had to pick a squad of 22, and I think I had 21 players. So how he couldn't make it, I don't know. Anyway, he kept pestering everybody else apart from me. So Shane Young, the manager, got in touch with me eventually, and I just laughed my head off. And I said, "Oh, let's play around with it." So we just teased him for a bit that he was in the team and whatnot. And then the other funny story I want to say is, at the start of the tournament, so like he's one of those things, like he just wears his heart on the sleeve, just love everything about him. And at the start of the tournament, he gets the first carry against Hong Kong, and it takes him about half an hour to get up. He got a whack, and you know, like the old, the old 60, 70-year-olds, they always say, "Oh yeah, that try I scored, it was a 1 meter try when it happened," and then after 70 years of chat, it becomes a 20 meter try. Well, Steve's has become the hit of the century. He was on the end of the hit of the century, apparently. I mean, it just looked like it tickled him. But yeah, really shocked death, really sad. More than happy to dedicate this whole podcast to him and his family. His dad, Pete, his brother, Pete, his dad, John, Kat, and the 3 kids. And sister Danny. It's been awful for so many people, but we've got brought together for rugby league, and I'm really happy to sort of dedicate this and whatnot. This podcast will be coming out a bit later than normal because of the funeral. I'm going to shut down my socials on Rugby League Coach on Thursday as a mark of respect. I'm just going to do one post about Steve, and that's it. But yeah, I mean, you've got to try and celebrate lives, haven't you, as much as you can.
Absolutely, and by all accounts, Steve packed a lot of life into his years, so there'll be a lot of celebration to be had. So this is for Steve and for Steve's family. Now, let's have a look at a few of the items we have on the agenda for today's meetings, for today's podcast. And something that's happened probably more prevalently, it's happening in the NRL at the moment. There was a really good example of it in the Host Plus Cup today, and it's coaching. Being the Rugby League Coach Podcast, it's a pretty good place to start. Coaching choices and how they pick their coaches. Sorry, how the teams pick their coaches across the NRL and the Super League. There's a lot of coaching movement happening at the moment, and it's just interesting to see the way that they're choosing who they want to get on board. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Lee, with your thoughts on the current coaching merry-go-round and what we're seeing.
It's also a perfect time for me to introduce the first guest that we brought on. So Joel,
sorry.
No, you're all right. I always have to fix him up. This is going to be funny because we had a chat the other day. We're actually going to swap roles, aren't we, every fortnight? Yeah. So when it's the player podcast, I'm the host, and everyone will think that I've sort of like kicked him out because of all the errors he makes, because he's always half asleep when he does it. But Joel Smith from JS Football, he's been on a few such things with me because we've done in the past coffee with the coaches, and I'm not ruling out doing that again. You could even be on that, Taylor, as the under-60s coach at Redcliffe Dolphins. So Joel is a soccer coach, round ball, football, and then Ranil here. How do we best explain you, Ranil? St George fan from Sydney, big helper of my programs in Sydney. Dressed like a lumberjack today, and the best hair in New South Wales.
The first lumberjack to get a perm ever.
How do we explain you, Ranil?
I don't know. Look, I still feel like I'm still learning the game. Obviously I'm helping Lee out with the clinics and whatnot. But personally, I've volunteered to be an assistant coach at my local junior rugby league club, Doonside Roos. And I thought I'll take that opportunity up. So, to develop my learning with the game, and then in turn, that would help like my work that I do with Lee.
So we've got 4 coaches, Taylor, if we include you as one. So once I've finished answering, I just know Joel will eat this up. So the question was about coaching choices. Look, just today, Taylor, there's been, or maybe this week, it's just the recycling of old coaches. I'm not going to pull out any individuals and say that one's wrong, because you always end up with egg on your face. But every coach choice this week in the Host Plus Cup, the Queensland Cup, in anything else associated in and around it, there's been some rep positions this week as well. It's all either ex-players or coaches already in the system. There's nothing new coming in. And I guess the whole question about coach choice to me, I always go back to the phrase, you don't have to have been a horse to be a good jockey. If I were to sit here and list all the jobs of a coach, knowledge of the game is about 10% of it in the NRL, maybe 20%, the X's and O's. When you think about the media, when you think about contracts, when you think about what somebody like Adam O'Brien is dealing with at Newcastle Knights right now, when you deal with something and some of the issues that Michael Maguire was dealing with when he was at West Tigers. I mean, where does that, you probably feel happy when you're on the training field because that's where you find life easiest. So we end up picking these coaches based on good footballing careers or the fact that they've just been in the system. And, I've been in the mix of plenty of jobs myself in the past. I've been in the mix of Queensland Cup jobs, second division jobs in England and whatnot. And I honestly reckon the ones that are missed out on rather than the ones I chose not to take, if I was in the game and had a few players on speed dial that had probably played at the top, not the top level, but the second division or third division level, and we're just doing the circuit, like churning over old recyclable plastic or something, or yesterday's leftovers from dinner and eating them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even though you got the takeaway on the Sunday. If I had a basket with those in, I reckon I'd have got these jobs because they didn't care about my coaching ability or pedagogy or my ability to build something from the ground up or anything like that. And I'm sure it stands for everyone else. And if I'd have played 50 NRL games, I would have got the job. Joel, in the round ball game, would you just probably say the same thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Slightly different perspective of things, even though what you're talking about is all the same issues that happen in, I suppose, the A-League here and professional coaching jobs underneath the A-League, like the National Youth League, which is the under-21s competition, and the academy jobs as well. Not as prevalent with ex-players, but as you're saying, yeah, look, it explained to me a few times from different people. Number one, like what a professional club is looking for. Number one is they've got to get some sort of, I suppose, reputation and media from signing a coach. So they've got to have that reputation already. So what an ex-player gives you is that instant reputation. Yeah, the instant media spotlight. If it's sort of someone who no one really knows, or is a I suppose a career coach in terms of maybe didn't make it to be a pro, but played at a decent level and been in the game, since they were young, played and got all their coaching licenses and all the rest of it, then yeah, it is very hard to break in. But there's always exceptions, but they're very few and far between. Obviously, the big ones in football and world football is your Jose Mourinho's and your Arsene Wenger's, those guys who won the Premier League in England.
Jurgen Klopp's a current one as well. I mean, he didn't have a very decorated.
He was a pro, but still, but yeah, as you're saying, like those number one, that's what a club's looking for is media attention, reputation, and that sort of thing. And as you said, it comes down to the technical knowledge and things like that. That's why a good coach, that's why Billy Slater, won the Origin. He had good, probably technical coaches underneath him that knew the game, knew how to.
Plus, he's a Channel 9 employee, and so's Brad Fittler. The other thing, mate, too, in England, Taylor, they might be bucking the trend a little bit because there's a Super League coach, Matty Pete, who never played at the top level, just came through the system at Wigan, through the coaching system, and of course, Rowan Smith at Leeds. So maybe the tide is turning. But I thought that 20 years ago too, and we're still talking about the same thing. Yeah.
I can't think of a single coach now in the NRL that didn't play NRL.
Brad Arthur, maybe. I don't think he played NRL.
Okay.
Don't think he played out NRL, to be fair. And I think he also did a very, very lengthy apprenticeship, though. It's just such a hard road to climb. Renil, why are you turning into a coach? What are you thinking?
Why am I turning into a coach? I think a lot of what you guys are talking about is the professional realm of things. But for me, it's more about the next generation, the kids, and at grassroots level. And for me, it's just interesting how they're being coached and they're being mentored on that level, you know.
That's another topic. Yeah. He's brought another topic up, Taylor.
Yeah.
We'll have to ban him. He's introducing topics.
No, I like it.
I do too. I do. Winding you up, Renil. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to one crucial thing. What makes a good coach? I guess NRL clubs and all that, when they go, I'm going to the board, we need a new coach, we're finding a good coach. What makes a good coach?
I did a poll. Sorry, Taylor.
Sorry. And it's hard to define without saying prior success. It's hard to define that because there's so many different things that a coach does. There's so many different realms. There's all this sort of stuff. So the biggest thing on their list is prior success. And it just leads to them reusing and rechurning the same old coaches that they.
I don't even know if it's prior success, mate. I mean, there's one appointment today. They've took somebody from 15th in the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the one I'm talking
about. Hang on a minute. I guess I did a post today about Adam O'Brien at Newcastle Knights. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that they employed him because he was the Storm assistant for so long and then at the Roosters. I do think, however, that the Storm and the Roosters have been quite successful very successful because of the calibre of person they hire, the recruitment they do, the way they look after people. You know, Melbourne, I've said this before on this podcast, do the deepest study on every player they recruit. They go back years and years and years. You're not going to get a bad egg in Melbourne. And if you do, Bellamy will give them short shrift, you know? So to expect a coach to come in from that system and then just replicate those coaching methods with the cattle that they have is a very simple way of looking at it. You should always look at your players and then form your coaching philosophy or your coaching ideas with what you've got versus how you're thinking of playing and meet somewhere in the middle. So when I think of my own coaching, obviously I've got a rough idea about how I want to play, but then I meet the players. If they're a bit bigger than I thought, we'll play a bit less of a mobile game, go a bit more towards building pressure and repeat sets and whatnot, and a bit more direct. If we're smaller, we'll be a bit more mobile, keeping the ball in play, etc., etc., etc. And you've been part of a couple of teams of mine that played like that. But ultimately, the framework I use is flexible. I can change it accordingly. It seems to me that Adam O'Brien has come in. Yes, he might have been the X's and O's man at Melbourne, but he didn't have to deal with the media. His media performance has been pretty shocking. Like he sounds. There was something I saw today. He sounded drunk. I'm not saying he was, but he sounded it. And
can I jump in there, Lee? It sounds like you're answering your own question in a way. So, with a player, an ex-professional player, they have had media training. They have kudos on the board with current players. So they've won the dressing room already without really having to do too much. So that's what I'm saying about what's happening is, and what the trend is that putting these coaches that are ex-pros into jobs, they do their little bit of time and get the head coach's role. Is they? But
it's just a sugar hit, isn't it?
They
have a sugar hit,
but they have the technical people there with them to help them, and that's the model that seems to be what's happening. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Yeah. I'm just saying that's what's happening.
Billy Slater has provided a sugar hit to Queensland. It was hardly tactical genius, but this is the other things. These are the other things that come into it that a coach needs to provide, and this is what Billy was good at. He brought them together. They wanted to play for the jersey. They wanted to play for Billy. He brought a staff together. They just looked together. Everything they did looked like they were together. And when you think back, Taylor, to some of the best teams you've played in, I remember 2011 when we won the GF, the defence we had to do on our goal line. And you were on the field, mate. I weren't, but I bet you weren't going to let your brothers down at that moment. You were going to do everything you could to stretch out and make a tackle. Or
I think after the first minute or two of defending our line, I thought, well, they're not going to break us now.
Yeah.
Because they had ample opportunity before then. I think we defended something like 6 sets or 7 sets, like 5 minutes straight on our line when we were up by 4 or something with not long to go. But I think after the first set or two, where they had plenty of opportunities to break us, and I think after that point, it got to we got to the stage where it was like, well, if they haven't already, they're not going to now.
Every premiership I've won as a coach has been based on defence, and the defence, they just wouldn't let each other down. Now that's something you can't coach as a X's and O's coach. You can give them the system, but you need players who are going to buy into that system. You also need an element of selflessness and whatnot. So then after Adam O'Brien's done his first year and realised, oh yeah, this roster's not what I want, blah, 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 then how are they getting recruited? So then you have to look at the rest of the club, I think. How much say does Adam Bryan get? And this has popped up at West Tigers too. Did Madge Maguire get his team, or was he part of a retention committee, a recruitment committee? And then the mudslinging starts. And any club that struggles doesn't have harmony in that regard. Frank Panisi, Craig Bellamy, Paul Bunn, they are like a team. Just like Pep Guardiola, Chicky Bereston, or whatever he's called, and Ferran Serrano, the 3 at Manchester City. When Manchester United were at the top of their game, they had a good triumvirate at the top with Alex Ferguson. We could go through so many things. If that's broken, or if that's not functional, then a coach is only as good as what he gets recruited to him. So, yeah, there's so many problems. I mean, they don't look like a fighting team or a team that want to play with each other necessarily. But we didn't come here to talk about Newcastle, but we're talking about coaching choice. And the coaching choice was Adam O'Brien. Oh, look, he's been assistant at Melbourne, and then he went to Roosters. He must be a good coach. A good head coach. Well, maybe not. Maybe he's just a good drills man, X's and O's man, and football man. Doesn't mean he can manage players. Doesn't mean he can manage a dressing room.
To be fair, what I've heard from Joel in the last couple of minutes, sort of why they're going towards the ex-player, would you say that's a better option than taking the man that's been the long-term assistant elsewhere else, like, at other clubs? It sounds like, from what you're saying, Joel, they're winning. They win the dressing room without too much trouble. There's that natural sugar hit to the media and all those sorts of things. And they have a better job with the media because they've had all the media training. Based on all those sort of, compliments, I guess, you've given to those players, would you say the appointment of Benji Marshall at the Tigers over the next however many years would have been a better appointment than Adam O'Brien? Someone that's just purely been an assistant's coach?
Well, I think if you look at it simplistically, not knowing Benji Marshall's ability as a coach at all, or
no one does.
Benji Marshall's done.
No one does. No,
or the lad you just spoke about who said who got the job. But look, for me, an example would be where I was at the Raw with the under-21s. I was assistant coach. They promised me the role when they moved on the head coach. They brought in an ex-Socceroo who you probably know, John Aloisi, scored winning penalty, got Australia through to qualify for World Cup in 20-odd years. And he came in, brought his brother in with him, brought in some couple other ex-Socceroos, and then wiped everyone else. So that, including myself, moving on. So I wasn't even given an opportunity. So that's the sort of thing where I suppose you look at it and you look at how that's gone ahead and where the Raw are now. They're in dire straits. Then they've gone with a coach that's got some proven success in the state league, who got I think a year or two as a pro in the early days of Raw, but was not really a well-known player, didn't kick on into the national team or anything like that. His name is Warren Moon, and he's sort of steadying the ship, but he's done the hard yards in the state league and built his reputation as a man manager. Not so he's got tactical awareness, but he always surrounds himself with good assistant coaches that know the training pitch, know how to get across messages, his philosophy, how he wants to play. And he's doing the best he can with a really limited budget compared to all the other A-League clubs, and he's finishing mid to top 6 in the couple of years he's had the role. So, look, it really is. I think if you appoint someone, you've got to give them time, and you've got to give them the ability to be able to implement their philosophy and work the change room and get in the players that they want eventually to make that system work.
That story about John Aloisi and the Raw, Taylor, I've heard it about 500 times.
Oh, here we go. The banter starts.
Oh, mate, you've never been on this podcast before, have you?
Well, you got stories in the podcast, so there you go.
Mate, honestly, every time, especially when he's had a couple. Honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you learning about coaching at your place, Renil, at Doonside?
Oh, it's a bit different when you have volunteers and parents coaching. But to be honest, I don't know how honest you want me to be.
Be as honest as you want to be.
Yeah, as honest as you want.
We don't edit anything. This is raw. Renil Raw, everyone.
For me, there's actually a lot that I took away that was negative. And that kind of made me think things a little bit differently towards sport, like in terms of rugby league and in the juniors.
Cool.
I think like some of the things that I've witnessed was a bit like, I can't believe that this is happening. I've witnessed a kid, a 13-year-old cry after a game, and the coach just yelling at him, just real negative feedback. Some of the comments coming out of coaches to players, if you didn't make a like, I've even heard coaches call some of these players like girls if they don't tackle properly.
It's probably in this day and age to use that term. Well, what's wrong with being a girl?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's lots of girls that can tackle better than me.
Yeah,
Lee can attest to that. I think I was never a defender.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, mate. I mean, we'll call this pod now Renil Kumar Raw. But mate, this is great insight, isn't it, Taylor? Like this is happening now, and this goes into the next topic, the coaching crisis.
It does. I was about to say before you try to be the host,
and then we'll have to put a time limit on Joel because he'll be tearing his hair out and everything when he talks about the coaching crisis.
There is blatantly a community coaching crisis. It's certainly being felt in the rugby league world. I'm sure Joel will give us his insight on what's happening in the round ball game. But you're 100% right, Renil. And the problem is that I just don't think we can entice enough people to get involved in the roles and the right people to get involved in the roles. And it sounds like you've had a really horrible, I guess, go at it over there at Doonside. That sounds as bad as it gets. What age group are you working with?
Under 13s.
Under 13s.
And this isn't anything you've not said to the club, is it?
I have actually brought it up.
Okay, so when Taylor sends this tape to the president, it's going to be okay.
Can I ask, how was it dealt with by the club?
Was it dealt with? It's sort of still being, dealt with and talked about.
Yeah.
But like I actually stepped aside for a little bit. Because I wasn't really happy. I even talked to the actual coach about this, and he didn't really want to hear anything. So I just wanted to sort of distance myself for a little bit, and decide whether I want to continue with this team or maybe see maybe go help out another team.
Would it shock you if I told you I turned up at Sanford last Saturday and they were all telling me about this under-6s coach from Redcliffe that was swearing at the children and screaming at the children and all this? He was a bit portly, had blonde hair and glasses. Any ideas?
I heard he was very, very good looking.
That's fake. That's a fake news story, by the way.
Look, I think for all the problems that our sport has, one thing that they're trying really hard at grassroots level is to implement good coaching standards across clubs. And one of the things that probably about, I would say, I would go about 6 to 10 years ago, what they implemented was a really strong coach education program, and then started bringing in standards across clubs that viewed themselves as elite development clubs and had to have minimum standard coaching licenses. So they had to achieve and have coaches in positions as low as under 9s with what's called a Youth C license, and start to build from there. And then a lot of the clubs, and then in order to have these programs and be recognised by Football Queensland, you have to have an employee that's employed as what's called a technical director. So someone who looks over and basically is a mentor for coaches and implements the youth development plans within the club. So all of those standards for coaching in terms of behaviour and all that sort of lifts, and the old school dads that are sexist and abusive tend to obviously go to the wayside a little bit. It might still, it's not saying it never happens in our sport, particularly at clubs that aren't in that space, but the majority, I think it's lifting and changing. So it might be something, I don't know what the NRL have done in Queensland with clubs and standards of coaching for youth development and focused in on those programs as an overarching thing at each club, but it could be something to look at if that still exists in large portions as what you're describing, Keneal.
Well, you have to have your level 1. You have to have your level 1 coaching, but I don't think there's any real standards in terms of once you get to a certain age group. I mean, when do you have to have your level 2, Lee? At what age group is that? Is that international level?
Yeah, international. Mate, when you're talking about quals, I'll tell you now, one of the reasons I'm firm about there being a coaching crisis in rugby league in particular is that, yes, you do have to have qualifications, but when clubs are turning around at the end of March, at the start of April, and there's still 2 or 3 sides that don't have a coach, you've not got time to qualify them. You need to put a body in front of these kids. And I'm telling you now that the era of the parent getting tapped on the shoulder to go and coach a team is not just alive and well. I think it's more common than ever. And I think that, in particular during the COVID times, I suppose we're still in the COVID times, but the height of it, and I just think some of these qualification courses and qualification processes just went by the wayside a little bit. That's not, I can't prove that. I've not studied it. It's just my gut feeling and just my anecdotal evidence, if you like, of people saying, I need to get qualified. How can I do it? And then people say, no, there's not one till, 6 months away or whatnot, or you've missed the one that's happened in Queensland this year or whatever, So the coaching crisis is that not enough coaches to fill the positions, and then the ones that aren't qualified. I mean, in my role as a mentor to so many coaches, I do hear some stories of political things at clubs. I've also heard some stories of awful coach behaviour. I won't talk about them here. I don't want to take this pod on a tangent for our listeners and viewers, but one of them in particular from the other side of the world is one of the most disgusting things I've heard in rugby league. And the game hasn't got an option really to get, or doesn't seem to be getting rid of these people, because who are you going to replace them with? And the lack of help. The other thing, the reason why I set up my website 4 years ago, rugbyleaguecoach.com.au, was because as a coach who's in his early 40s, I can count on one hand the amount of rugby league coaching books I've read. And trust me, I never walk past a bookshop and I don't know what books. I don't know of any book that I wouldn't know of. So there's just nothing out there for coaches. So I devised something. How can we expect our coaches to have anything if we don't help them? How can we expect our coaches to teach our kids how to tackle so that they don't end up unconscious or doing hip throws or chicken wing if there's somebody unqualified coaching them who had about a week to prepare for his first game or her first game? And most of the vast majority of these people, these coaches, are great people, and this is why I feel so sorry for them. Of course, there's a couple of fools out there involved in it, but the vast majority are just great people who want to help, and they want help. They want help, and they need help. And if we want our kids to be better at anything, they need mentors. So we need to help our mentors. And I think there's a coaching crisis. I'll bring in Ranil on this now, like, if you don't mind, Taylor. Ranil spoke to me maybe in March and said, or maybe April, I think it was, and said, I'd love to get involved in a club. Do you reckon I can do it next year sometime? I said, tell me if I'm wrong, Ranil. I said, mate, go and see your local club. They'll be desperate to have you.
Yeah.
And it turned out that way, didn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't very hard.
Yeah. So it's not like, I know Ranil isn't an axe murderer, but, straight in, there you go, bang, bang, there you go. Like, it's not.
Yeah. It's tough. I remember, like, for myself, playing and growing up in rugby league, I remember having, my first coach didn't have any kids involved in the side. He was just a bloke, a local fella that just loved getting involved. He done purely 6s, 7s, and 8s, and just got a year and moved on and just taught the real basics of catch, pass, all that sorts of things. Macca was a great coach, and that's what he done, and that's what he was good at. So he kept with those age groups going through, and then I had a host of coaches around him, around the club, that would just get involved at certain age groups, and it was barely any of them were parents, and they got involved.
Just hold the thought where you are, because to encourage that, coaches need a pathway.
Yes,
and I'm sorry, when you know that an ex-player who's done a bit of coaching can get just catapulted above you if you've done 30 years of coaching, people are losing faith in the pathway. So, any job you do in any organisation, you hope that if you impress your employers, you'll get a pay rise and a promotion. Correct, Joel? Correct, Ranil?
That's the biggest statement of the night is, and that's something I'm struggling with at the moment, is a pathway. I've reached where I can reach without someone opening a door for me above. And, it's very, very difficult for that to happen. It's frustrating, and you do question, why am I giving up all this time for very little money, away from my family, with no, you have, like, the love, the passion, yes, it's there, but at the end of the day, you want to do something with it as well, because you have put your own time and money into it. And just like as a teacher, if I did my uni degree, it cost me X amount of dollars to get my teaching degree, and then you could never get a job, it would be obviously devastating. So it's a similar thing in the coaching realms. It's such a cutthroat industry. There's only 10 A-League teams in Australia. There's one in New Zealand. There's just not enough jobs, and there's just not enough pathway or opportunities for someone like myself to go any further than a state league head coach.
So back to Taylor's point. So then, you can continue talking about your coaches and Taylor, but you got that great coaching at that age because somebody was there purely to coach. Purely. Yes. And somebody who looked at it from a bigger picture perspective, thinking these little ankle biters, they don't need block plays and 3-pass shifts and this, that, and what they need is some core skill and just to enjoy their football because they saw the bigger picture. So, if you want a coaching pathway, if you want your kids to get the best coaching, you need to invest in it. And like I said last week about the bunker, get rid of the bunker, save $2 million, put it into coaching pathways. Thank you. I've just done your job for you, Peter Volandis.
So, like on what Lee said, is that something that would help? Do you think, Ranil, in those situations, if the NRL pumps some more money into the coaching pathways, they pump some more money into the junior areas, what can we do to entice better coaches to come to the game?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I do feel a lot with what Lee's saying about there's just not a lot of coaches out there to begin with, and there's not much. You don't really get much out of it either. At the end of the day, what are you doing it all for? What's what's the future? What's the pathway? Like what you guys are saying, I would actually like to ask, what is maybe Lee might know this, but what is the NRL doing in terms of having a plan for these coaches on a junior platform, like on a local grassroots?
They will tell you you've got plans, so they'll talk about the Rise program. Taylor's been on the Rise program.
Still on the Rise program.
Still on the Rise program. I'm not going to put words in Taylor's mouth, but yeah. Is on the Rise program, and so they'll come back with the right words and the right phrases. And yes, they are doing stuff. They are, You know, there's not one person in the NRL with an NRL logo on their chest that I don't see working hard or working in most of the right direction. There's no dramas there. It's about resources from the big picture. It's also about the pathway.
Program. What's the Rise program? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll go back to it in a minute because it's Taylor will be able to paint it for you. All of this is irrelevant if people don't think they're going to get to the top. So I keep going back to this as one example. And everyone, yeah, but they won, so what are you saying? Queensland, so the biggest job in Queensland was given to somebody who'd never been a head coach before.
Mm.
So why do a 20-year apprenticeship to be a head coach? Why? Well, 30 years. Why? They reckon it takes 20 years to be an expert at anything. That's why I keep saying 20 years. Why do that? And I guess, yes, there are coaches who just want to help their kids. The vast majority of coaches in the community are parents. There's other coaches who are just happy doing the level they are at. But it's human nature to want to move up in your industry, isn't it? That's the same in any workplace. Some people just like staying and some people like going up. It's human nature.
Oh, yeah.
Rugby league is jobs for the boys, and the amount of backstabbing that goes on in clubs as well, particularly NRL clubs, is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I've got a friend who's just left one of the lowly NRL clubs, let's just say, and the stories you would hear from that club are just breathtaking about backstabbing and he said, she said, and it is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. Like it's just a rancid, toxic scenario out there for coaches. It really is. And I'm basically saying to any 23, 24, 25-year-old out there now, if you want to coach all the way to the NRL, or Super League, you've got to hope the system changes and that somebody books the trend somehow.
The only way that you've got a real shot is you have to be an ex-pro, and that's the conclusion I've come to. And it's very rare. There's rare as hen's teeth those that break through. I mean, it's almost impossible. And so you've got to be content with being at the level that you can reach, and you've got to be passionate and love what you're doing. Yeah, because it can be a grind. It can be an absolute grind, and you will lose good quality coaches because there is a lack of pathway. Yep. Or that you can't go any further at a certain level unless you're an ex-pro, and that's just how it is. Yep. And that needs to be made clearer to people, I think, before they go into it, if that's what they're going into it for.
Can I ask you guys something?
Absolutely.
You just did.
Applies to.
You've only got one question.
This probably applies to all sports anyway. So how important is it to have that professional experience as a person going into a coaching role?
Do you mean a playing role?
Yeah.
I personally believe that having played the sport that you're coaching, at the very basic level, if I'm saying to a player, smash that person running at you, early in your coaching career, if they don't think you've ever played the game before, you don't look like you've played the game before or whatever, there could be a doubt in a certain player's mind about that instruction. I think the other thing too is it's a great way to experience high performance environments. So when I first started coaching, I was a duplicate of my two best coaches, which were when I played sort of junior international type stuff. So I do think it carries you somewhere. And like Joel referred to earlier, and I called it a sugar hit. I suppose your first year or two as a coach, that gives you a sugar hit. What that doesn't do is prepare you for year 3, year 4, year 5. I'll give you a great example, Brad Fittler. There's countless examples in football, Joel. Countless. Frank Lampard's a great one now. Right? He clearly doesn't know how to manage a team. And he's keeps getting jobs because he's Frank Lampard.
What's happened to Ollie Gunnar Solskjaer?
Yeah. Everton were in a bit of trouble, so they sacked one of the best managers Europe's seen in the last 25 years and replaced him with Frank Lampard, who turned Chelsea from a powerhouse into a you-know-what house. So, and I just don't understand at which point did the Everton boardroom go, right, we know the man to get us out of trouble, Frank Lampard. I mean, luckily they did, but their pre-season form suggests that they might be in a bit of trouble. But anyhow, we digress. Rugby league, the best example I can think of off the top of my head, Taylor, is Brad Fittler. When he started at the Roosters as a coach in late 2000s, he gave the club a sugar hit, right? Got the job full time, but then once everything starts, when the professional wheels start moving, opposition start working this, that, and the other out, he was lost a bit for answers. What he has done, and all credit to Brad Fittler for this, he's taken some time away from coaching. He's obviously been commentating on the game and passing comment on the game. But what he's also done is come through the New South Wales system. People forget he was a New South Wales under-16s coach about 10 years ago. He had Bradman Best as a 16-year-old. Pardon me. So, obviously Brad Fittler's Brad Fittler, so he got leg ups and all this. But to be fair, he's also done something of an apprenticeship. So anybody that thinks that this New South Wales era of series wins is an accident, I always argue to the contrary, that he's improved as a coach. And if he got a crack at the NRL again, he'd be okay, but he'd be better. Mick Potter's a perfect example. He's gone away, remodeled himself a little bit and doing great things with Bulldogs. But when you get fast-tracked into it, you're learning while you're going. I remember Billy Slater saying, I don't know how I will respond in the coaching box. This is before Origin 1. I do not know how I will respond. So it's a coaching experiment using Origin.
I think you go back even earlier to when you talk about sugar hits and putting great players in as coaches straight away with virtually zero coaching experience. There's no greater example than Wally Lewis.
Yeah.
The best player probably arguably of all time.
Yeah. If you live north of the Tweed, anyway. If you live south of the Tweed, they come up with a few.
He failed. Did he? Besides one Origin series, didn't he? He failed at every other level that he coached at.
He didn't coach Origin. Wally Lewis did not coach Origin. No.
He coached Gold Coast, didn't he?
Yeah, Gold Coast, whatever's they were called. Yeah,
the Seagulls,
Crushers or something. Yeah.
They were the South Queensland Crushers, mate.
Yeah. So coaching crisis.
Yeah, the coaching crisis. Okay, let's move on. I think we could talk about that one for a long time. We're going to move on to a topic that we've pushed for a couple of weeks because we've had some pretty blockbuster weeks in terms of content. We haven't missed it, haven't been short of things that we could talk about. To be fair, we're not short of things we could talk about this week, a la Cleary lift, Carrigan hip drop. There's plenty of things always happening in rugby league. But I'm going to talk about overcoaching. Overcoaching, we could talk about all the way from the NRL level through to your grassroots level, Renil. But Lee, overcoaching. You always point to one massive example in the NRL, and I reckon his name is going to get brought up again today as well.
Adam O'Brien.
No, overcoaching. Luke Brooks.
Yeah. The other thing is, the reason for this topic, boys, is I've done some coaching at a club in Ipswich last couple of weeks, Carolee Tornadoes, and I did a session when I first turned up. It was with the under 8s or 9s, or I forget. I just seem to have ankle biters a lot of the time, and they were all shocked. They were expecting somebody to come in with all this technical jargon and hocus pocus and this, that, and the other. And instead, I just did a very basic session. I could explain the session to you, but it was quite basic. But the kids learned something, and I checked it because I'm an experienced teacher, so I know how to check that they've learned something. And they were all sort of amazed not amazed, that's probably too strong a term, but they were like, look, they are actually getting better at tackling, but you didn't fill their heads full of jargon. And I had a chat with the president, Pickle, about it. I said, mate, it was an awesome chat because we're both coaches, so we get on like a house on fire. I said, mate, I coach to be understood. And I guess that was the biggest change in my coaching. Sort of like the first 10 years, I had to fill my head with tactical stuff and all this. And it sometimes make players hear everything I knew in my head to prove that I knew what I was talking about, so they'd have faith in me. Now, I'm so economical with my words and my phrases and whatnot. It's because it's been, again, refined over all these years of coaching. You know, why say something in 6 paragraphs if you can say it in a sentence? And it has just exactly the same meaning. So I did this session and got the outcomes out of it. And I guess one of the biggest problems I see, Joel, in coaching is overcoaching. You know, getting talent and putting so much garbage into the talent's head that they can't access their talents because they're too busy trying to play to a system or can't understand the system.
It's always a fine balance and age, what age it is as well. So obviously your younger ankle biters, as you've said, you know, really need to be focused on their core skills and getting that into them. And as long as it's, I'm always a believer in making things as much as possible game related, although it is important to do things in isolation as well to take pressure off players. It depends what level they're at as well. But yeah, as you said, you can give too much information and then you can influence in the wrong way as well. Like classic example from I'm coaching my son in the under 18s at Rochedale Rovers this year, and
don't look old enough, does he, Taylor?
And this
no comment.
Do you want to borrow some of Ranil's hair, Joe?
Oh mate, I'd love some. And one of the example I want to use, I have this player who's just really loves getting on the ball, taking on players. He's, you know, skillful player, 1v1 type player, and just trying to get him to fit into our system a little bit better and choose and make better decisions around when to use those strengths of his. And the one thing we had this excellent team move. We set up, got into their box, got this player onto the ball. He beat a player, had the goal at his mercy, and saw another player coming in who was probably in a better position and passed it, and a trailing defender came and blocked the pass. And when the goal was open for him to shoot, and think, have I gone too far with him in terms of trying to influence his decision making? So, and that's a thing I reflect on as a coach. Think, you know, I've got to now try and refine. We've got him one way. Have I taken him too far the other? So that's always a fine juggling. And at the end of the day, you're trying to improve the player at that level and under 18s as well as the team, but you're trying to make them better so they can kick on and make a first team in a year or two.
You haven't coached or taught until they've learned.
Mm.
I always call it the coaching oven. You put something in an oven, you expect it to come out
cooked,
but if you cook it too much and too hard and too heavy, it'll burn. And if you don't cook it enough, it'll be raw. And I guess it's exactly the same with coaching. You've got to get the temperature right so that they come out at their optimum. And I guess, you know, overcoaching, undercoaching is very rare. Actually, some coaches who undercoach but have great man management skills tend to be quite successful, because we also notice, Ranil, and you'll know this as well from your short coaching experience, players do actually have knowledge, don't they?
Yeah.
It's not like they are sans knowledge, which is French for without knowledge. They sans knowledge. They have something, but they do have knowledge. If you just said to a kid, "There's a ball, do something with it," they'll come up with something. They'd run north, won't they? You know, have you noticed that this year?
Yeah, and they also have their own ideas about things and own opinions as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach growing up now, one of the things you do is elicit question and answer with them so that you get them to think of the answer and they'll own it more. I know one of my coaching mentors, he won a competition one year. He said, "Boys, how do you want to play?" And he got them to say how he wanted to play, and he just steered the conversation. And in the envelope, he had a thing about how he wanted to play. And then when he got the conversation and they said, "Do you all own it?" He said, yeah, we own it. He went, "Right, I'm just going to read what's in this envelope." Open the envelope up, and he explained everything that they just said that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what, overcoaching, it's easy to do on your first way around. It can be easy to do. And I guess, Joel, you asked me a little bit about, you asked what the RISE program was earlier. It's a program that QRL does. They bring in kids pay to be in the program. They get coaching from specialist coaches from the 13s through to the under 15s level, boys and girls. Although I've only started coaching this year in the under 6s level, because my son's there, this is my limited coaching experience, because I had played at the club only a couple of years ago, they asked me to come down and be involved in the program, which I did. I thought I'd give it a go. And just because I'm used to playing and being involved at the level I was playing at, I was with 13-year-old blokes and we're doing a simple tackling drill, and I just overcooked them with knowledge. And I didn't realize that I was doing it until it was just clunky. The whole drill was clunky. Things weren't happening. And then a guy that was running the program, who'd been coaching for a lot longer than I did, just come up and just grabbed the drill by the horns and just said, boys, all you got to do is we're tackling, we're hitting under the ball. Just hit under the ball. And then he kind of let them do the drill and then just taught little bit by little bit extra to whoever needed it on the side. Whereas I would see a tackle and I'd go, well, your feet weren't close enough. You did this, blah, blah, blah. You tried to hit over the ball. And I try to overcoach the one player individually at the one time. It can be so easy to do if you're not experienced enough doing it. And it didn't occur to me until I really sat back and watched the coach do it in front of me. And I went, oh, wow, I've really screwed the pooch on that one almost straight away.
So, Joel, this is an interesting little social study because Taylor and Ranil are basically both in their first year of coaching. One with a deep level of playing experience at a really high level, and the other's called Taylor Brown. No. Taylor Brown played for Redcliffe Dolphins in the Queensland Cup, and he's played under 20s for the Dragons and was at the Bulldogs as well. So he's got professional rugby league experience. The other one is Ranil, who's got a passion, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 arms and 2 legs, but a passion, haven't you, for the game?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
And guess who he supports, Taylor?
Dragons.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's smart, that's why.
Smart, yeah.
Doesn't
like winning premierships.
Until next year, then he'll be a Dolphin supporter if he's smart. But anyway,
that's what you're doing, eh?
Yeah, I'm jumping ship.
I've got a little bit of history with rugby league in my family. My grandmother's brother played in for St George when they won the 11 premiership straight back whenever that was.
Yeah, right.
About 1901 or something.
Yeah,
how old are you,
like
Joel?
Yeah, something like that.
No wonder you've got an 18-year-old. You're about 70.
That'll be you, lad. Yeah, easy. Watch yourself. You'll be 70 with an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
That'll be
No
you, Leroy.
comment.
Great uncle.
That'll
like
be
that.
you, Leroy.
No comment. No comment, Taylor Brown. Next. I played
Might
the
have an
fifth.
18-year-old that we don't know of.
I played the fifth.
He's got an 18-year-old that you don't know about, and then probably when you do know about it.
Ranil, you're young enough to be my son, I think.
Exactly.
Where were you born?
Oh, you think something gorgeous as Ranil's locks could have come from you? You're kidding.
Ranil started this meeting off Joel before. I think it was before you got him. Oh no, you were here before we pressed record. I've just got out the shower. And we all know, like Taylor likes to act. Like Taylor invited me to sleep in the NAC the other week.
Yeah.
I must stress at this juncture, we weren't in the same room in the same bed. It was in one of these forums. He went into a deep, meaningful. I was actually in a different state to him on the other side of the continent, which we call our home, and he was talking to me about sleeping au natural. Joel. Ranil, how do you do?
Right. I only sleep in the nude when I'm naked, mate.
What?
There you go.
Did you see that seedy wink he just did?
There you go.
You're not listening to this. Stop it.
I love it. Ranil.
Well, isn't that what we're meant to do anyway, naturally?
Here we go.
Ranil loves camping. I bet you don't do it when you're out.
On the hunter. The hunters become the hunted. Oh, Leroy from the north. That's why. It's too cold in England to sleep in the nud.
No. Well, no, you can turn your eating up. I tell you what I did used to do. So you put the thermostat on so that the heating kicks in at like 4 a.m. or whatever, so you wake up at 6. Well, no, we never woke up at 6. We're talking about 8. And it used to be that cold in winter that I would be there. Like, I'd be okay. You could sleep in your undercrackers because the heating was on. But you knew once you came out of the environs into the hallway or whatever, it'd be freezing. So I used to run into the bathroom, shut all the windows, turn the shower on full blast warm, shut the door, get back into bed for 5 minutes, and then sprint back into the bathroom, and then the bathroom would be warm because it'd be just fully steamed up. That was mad. Yeah.
That's too much. How can you do it?
Mind you, I don't know if I've ever been as cold as when I lived in Campbelltown for a bit.
Campbelltown was cold. It was that boarding house, mate. It was the best of blocks. It was the worst insulation you ever had in your life. It was terrible insulation. All right. Well, before we wrap anything up or do anything like that, would you like to have a quick conversation about the Pat Carrigan hip drop tackle?
Me personally, I don't think there was any malice in it. I just think he wanted to bring him down, and I think the whole problem goes back to wrestling, allowing the wrestle. They've got to start calling held when they just stood up and held up. They've just got to start calling held. You're referring to questions sent from our man Kirk Collins, the star of this podcast, who comes on it once a semester.
I am referring to the questions from Kirk. Ranil, did you see the Carrigan hip drop tackle?
I actually didn't. I missed that one, but I saw the highlights of it.
Well, I'm in Sydney in the next couple of days, Ranil. I'll come and do it to you in the street.
I
don't
see my guest.
I don't mean you don't want or the Mongolian deathlock.
I struggle to see how there's 4 weeks in it. I really, really do. I don't know how you can suspend someone for 4 weeks off that. I understand that Hastings broke his leg. I understand that means dire things for his season. I understand that there can be lots of injuries from tackles similar, but I don't think he tried to do a hip drop in the first place. It just kind of where the tackle took him.
That's exactly what I think. And have you noticed I didn't say I think the punishment was too harsh? Because I don't necessarily. I just don't know if he had any malice in it.
But I'm also of the opinion that Dale Finucane, the suspension on him was a terrible suspension.
I
don't know what the technical rules are, but generally what happens is, regardless of malice or intent, it's the outcome and what position they're in and all that sort of stuff that determines how many weeks out and all that sort of stuff.
For sure. So if Jackson Hastings had broke a toenail, then
it's still got 3 weeks because of the type of tackle, wouldn't he?
Well, do you think that's? Do you think
I don't know. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying isn't that how these things operate? Aren't they?
But should they operate like that?
That's another discussion.
I just if I could tackle anyone and they could, if someone runs into me with their head down and I make contact with my chest on their head and they get knocked out, right?
Whose fault's that?
Let's say they're prone to head knocks. They get knocked out for a couple of minutes or whatever it is, and then they make a decision to medically retire that player. Do I now get suspended for making contact with his head, even though he's, I've stood my ground, he's run into me?
What's the rule though? The
rule is any contact with the head.
Any head, okay. So they need to maybe reflect on the body position or the head position of the attacking player. Have they put themselves into a dangerous position? They
haven't done that with the Dale Finucane case last week.
We talked about overcoaching. I think the officials are getting overcoached.
I believe so too.
And there is paralysis by analysis, and the refs are a bit confused, and the bunkers are a bit confused, and the touches are a bit confused, and the fans are confused. And
if you're playing in the NRL now, I don't understand why you wouldn't just run into every tackle head first. If you're an attacking player, if you get the ball,
probably because you get knocked out. That's probably why I wouldn't do it.
Well, you might, yeah, sure, but any contact with your head,
I think
a penalty. You're going to get the penalty straight away.
And I think that wrestling has to be banned. So, like, Anybody who knows anything about rugby league knows when a couple of defenders are in there just trying to dance and catch and dance, because the feet aren't moving very far. The ref should call held. And there should be no drop. If they drop them, penalty. Right? That's my personal opinion.
The biggest thing, I think, with all, when you talk about fouls and misconduct, that's what you're talking about. Same with football. Referees make decisions on the outcome. And that's why we have so much diving in football. It's a plague, is because of the outcome. So,
do you coach diving?
Well, no. Well, not normally in English speaking countries. It does happen across in Europe and things like that a lot.
Sweeping statement there from Joel.
Yeah, well, it is a known fact that more English speaking countries tend to be more physical with the game, and the I suppose the nuances or the gamesmanship isn't as prevalent. But I think the reason why diving exists is because referees call a foul based on the outcome. So if you get clipped, say you're going at pace, you're running with the ball, defender comes across and clips you, you stumble and keep your feet, and that slows you down and allows another defender to come and tackle you, you don't get the foul. Yeah. Whereas if you get clipped and get fouled and go down,
you see strikers all the time. You see strikers all the time in soccer. The amount of times they get clipped the tiniest bit, or not at all.
Yeah.
But they feel like they might have, so they dive.
They feel contact, so they go down. Yeah. To get the free kick, to get advantage. Yeah.
And if they'd have stayed on their feet, they'd have actually been in a better position. There was a case in the Premier League last year where a striker actually tried to stay on his feet, and the commentator said he'd have better off just falling down.
And that's again the issue is for me, referees need to be a shift. Referees need to make calls based on the actual foul, what's actually the contact that's happened. Maybe let it play. They have advantage in football, so you can always come back. But start doing that more. Play on the actual contact. Is it a foul? Let's call it, rather than wait for it's actually encouraging players to go down really easily.
And the other thing, the other thing, TB, you don't get any reward for a legs tackle in league.
No.
You know the old tackle that you got taught?
Yeah, around his leg. Can't go anywhere without his legs.
Yeah.
I remember the biggest...
Get no reward for that in the game now.
Biggest applaud of the weekend was a bootlace. Yeah.
Get off him.
Yeah.
Movement.
So,
whatever.
Joel, my question to you, you're a coach. You've just said that you don't coach your players to dive. You're obviously pretty against it. Is that fair to say that you're against players taking a dive?
100%.
So if you've got your under 18 side, you're in the grand final this year, and you get a situation where your striker gets clipped, has the opportunity to take a dive, with a minute to go and it's 0-0, and he doesn't do it. Would you be instructed? Like, would you have said at the time, well, mate, maybe that was the time you could have done it? Well, are you happy to let the big games hinge on the fact that you don't do it? Because telling you as a player right now, if that was me, if that was that situation and I was there and I could, if I could do something, if I was an attacking player and I was attacking the 20-meter line, I would do everything I could to piss off the defender to try and hold in the tackle or do something grubby, so we get an opportunity for a 2-point kick. That's what I'd do.
I suppose I'll clarify my statement. Is if you've been fouled and disadvantaged, and there's no way for you to keep going and get an advantage, I would say, and you somehow you can stay on your feet, but you're not going to get a free kick. You've been fouled, go down. Particularly if it's in the box. If you're what I don't want to see from players is if they're not fouled, not touched, go down and try and actually fake contact and go down. That's the difference that I'm talking about, and that's what exists in our game, which infuriates non-football people that go and watch. Maybe they come and watch a game. I'm talking about Australia, particularly Queensland. I'm not fussed about watching football. It's this, it's that. A big game's on. They watch it and they go, that's why I don't watch it. It's too much diving, that sort of stuff. So
it's common that people do say, I don't like it's not enough. There's too much diving.
Yeah. So that for me is the point is when you're not fouled and you're playing for a free kick, then that's the simulation, and that rule exists to card the player for simulation. But I'm more talking about referees need to stop all the to keep the game flowing and to stop diving on a little bit of contact. You need to play. Is that a foul, regardless of what the player does that's been fouled?
Mm. I guess it's hard to see in real time too, isn't it? It's hard to see without the replays. It's if it's not one of the top tiers of soccer where you can analyze it, over and over again. I get you're down at your local park football. It's hard if you don't get a good look at it, and some of those contacts can be very difficult to understand and very difficult to wrap your head around. All right, well, Lee, you seem. What are you doing? You're kicking back. You're part of this. Are you the host?
What I often do, because I'm a polite man, is to stop myself getting excited so I don't interrupt. Because especially me and Joel, we talk quite intensely about coaching. Yeah. I've actually decided if I lean back now, if I need to say something, I've actually got to make quite a bit of a adjustment to say something. So it's actually a professional way I was approaching it. So why don't you just shut your cake hole, tell them?
Okay, well, it just seems like a really well-winded excuse for just being rude.
You know what else I was doing then? I was just sharing the recordings of our QLS, Queensland League Scene, all good YouTube stations, and Facebook, Queensland League Scene. I was just sharing that with the producer, Kelly Bogan, doing your work again.
Doing my work again?
Yes.
Oh, all right. So now I've got to let you off the hook for calling you rude, do I?
Mate. You'll never call me rude again, will you? Now after that, I've just literally crushed it back at you.
Yeah, that was good. All right, before we wrap up episode 11, Rugby League Coach podcast, Renil, long time listener, first time caller. Have you got any final thoughts on tonight's episode? Any more 2 cents you want to throw in before we shut the curtains on today's episode?
I've never done a podcast before, being part of one, so yeah. Hope I did good.
You're not doing one again. You don't talk. You just never shut up, mate.
I get that from you.
Performance review.
There's it's also good to see Joel part of it. Different perspective on a different.
Wait till you get to meet him, mate. You won't say that. Once you get to know him, he's banging the door down to come on.
He's
banging it or banging. Banging the door.
You're brave. You didn't say it last week when there was 3 pommies on, did you? Hey?
Mate, I don't have to say anything to you pommies anymore. Look at the medal tally.
Oh, yeah. I told you, when you're in the pool, once you get on terra firma, dry ground, land.
Mate, you're surrounded like water like us.
Yeah,
surrounded by water.
It's too cold for get in, lad.
Look, just to butt in there, big shout out to the English women's football team who just won the Euros.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I saw that. The men have been saying they'll bring it home for 60 years, and the women finally did it for them. Oh, come on, England. Oh, sorry. I love it. It's a good remix, that one.
And just in my defence too, Lee rang me at 8:15 and said, "Look, do you mind jumping on this blog?" Someone must have pulled out.
8:15 a.m.
Well, Joel, I'll tell you what, it has been unique getting the round ball opinions and the soccer.
When are you going to get some guests on,
mate? I've got some guests lined up. That I've spoken to this week.
What, your 2 kids, your missus, who else?
Mate, my 2 kids. You don't want my 2 kids on here. They'll give an honest performance review of Dad.
One of them's been on.
Max came on.
Max came on.
Max came on and said good day. No, you don't want the missus to come on.
We didn't warn Joel and Real. We never edit this. It's just literally.
No, we don't. Zero editing.
We don't plan anything. We just send a text. Here's tonight's topics.
Yeah, 2 or 3 texts, and
we don't chat about them. We just go.
That's it. Yeah.
That's the way to go these days.
Disgrace myself too much. If I have it won't be the last time either.
No, mate, you were fine. It's as I said, it was really good to get this perspective of someone involved in soccer.
Soccer.
Yeah. We're
not American. Soccer. Play soccer in California, man.
Football, call it by its right name, like its actual real name, association football. Thank you.
And rugby league is rugby league football.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's a round ball. It's the same thing.
I could go, mate. Do you want the podcast another hour? How the sports grew out of the north of England? Do you want
No, I just like
in 1895.
I like seeing you go right up trying to defend your pommy round ball. That's all. I think it offends you deep in your blood.
Yeah.
Not as much as it offends you when Man City lose. That really gets your gears going.
It just doesn't happen that often.
All right, fellas. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining. Anytime, you guys are more than welcome. We usually record on Thursdays. So keep the links now that you have them. Same link every single week. So hopefully we get to see you boys again. And Lee,
get rid of Taylor. We'll just have me and you again, Joe.
Yeah, do it. That's fine. I'll go down to Doonside with Renil.
We'll start our own podcast, Taylor.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. 100%. The Jackson boys.
Yeah.
So before the recording, Joel, were you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh yeah. He was saying that Renil looks like Michael Jackson back in the day, before he changed.
He changed.
That's all I'm saying.
That's not true for me.
Isn't that topic even more taboo in 2022 than it was at the time?
Yeah, I thought Keneal was more.
Keneal, who's Keneal? Evil Keneal.
Evil Knievel.
I thought it was Steve Renouf to start.
No worries, Joe. Keneal. Keneal Ruma.
Keneal
Apologies.
So what you're saying anyway, Joel?
I said before I stuffed up, I thought Renil was Steve Renouf.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey,
looks a bit like the Pearl with hair.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a big compliment.
Got that one before.
Yeah, there you go.
I normally get Sideshow Bob.
Do you? Although I reckon if you straightened your hair, it would keep going for days.
Taylor's like the Milky Bar Kid. If you don't know who he is, Google him.
Yeah, the Milky Bar Kid. Yeah, I've got that before. And I got I forget what movie it is. I'll have to look. Sherman Merman.
Harry Potter.
No, not Harry Potter. What's Sherman Merman?
Milky Bar Kid. I'm just Googling Milky Bar Kid.
Yeah,
if that's okay with a host.
Brett, he was on Bad Santa, Sherman Merman.
The Milky Bar Kid is tough and strong.
Yeah, I've gotten that a couple of times. Sherman Merman. Give me that nickname, actually, Lee Addison. It was Tim White. Tim White gave me that nickname and sees Triple C Camp.
Oh, yeah.
Sherman Merman.
There's the Milky Bar Kid there. He's got a hat on.
Oh, that actually looks like me when I was a kid. Funny enough. I'll have to get some
make
pictures.
Make yourself a few quid. So, yeah, I was a Milky Bar Kid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The song used to go, the Milky Bar Kid is tough and strong. Milky Bar Kid, all day long, something all day long. Yeah.
Jeez, they were delicious too, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. We digress.
We do digress before we review that. So I think before a little bit of homework for Lee before we record our next episode. You got to sleep in the nude. We've tried to tee it up before. You still haven't done it. We've now got.
Do you know?
You now got 3v4. We expect a full scale review.
I might have accidentally slept au natural on Friday after I'd had a couple.
Accidentally?
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, that's not a full review.
It was you.
That's not a. That's true. That's true. It doesn't count.
It's cheating.
Oh, the Rugby League Coach podcast, not the Keneal Rumor podcast. Take care, boys.
All right. Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. See ya.